Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve. And I was at the gathering last year, and so it's so nice to be back this year. Early in the week, I thought, well, I better contact Steve and find out what the topic is, because I assumed it's going to be something I thought on Jesus, on crucifixion, resurrection, something like that. And I thought, well, that's no problem. I can talk for an hour on that, no problem. And then he texted me back and said it's on friendship, and I began to panic. Because I can't just go on for an hour or less than an hour on friendship. So I was thinking about friendship, initially, and I thought, well, what can we, I was supposed to introduce myself, I'm so sorry if you weren't there at the gathering last year. I'm Father John Sullivan. I'm a Jesuit from Canada, though I'm not from this area. My home is in the province of New Brunswick. Has anyone ever gone to New Brunswick before? Ah, you're going soon. Nice, very nice. It's right on the Atlantic Ocean. It's the lobster capital of the world. If you like lobster, it's the place to go. Anyway, far from Toronto. But as a Jesuit, I'm assigned to the Jesuit Church in Toronto, Our Lady of Lourdes, which is downtown on Sherbourne in Wellesley. If you live downtown, you're most welcome anytime. Anyway, that's who I am. So with regard to friendship, I thought, well, what do I say about friendship? What's friendship? And I thought, well, okay, friendship is the guys that I sit on the couch with and watch the game. And I thought, well, I can't talk about watching a football game or baseball game for so long, certainly not an hour. So I thought more and more about friendship. Anyway, if you think about friendship, what are the things that come to mind? You have to help me because we've got 50 minutes. And I have about 2 minutes worth of material, so you need to help me. So when we think of friendship, what do we think of? Communication? Nice.
Respect.
Respect, good. Go ahead, Miss.
Someone you can confide in.
Someone you can confide in, good.
Someone you can trust.
Trust. You can love, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else when we think of friendship? Yes. Someone who you can borrow money from, exactly. Those are the best friends, exactly. Yes. Yeah, ongoing relationship, something that's mutual, very good. I'm sorry, that's good. Commitments, very good. Commitment for sure, yeah, you're committed, loyal to each other, yeah. Loyalty, nice. Put your hand up at the back. Yeah, so all those things are true. And again, I thought, oh my gosh, how do I talk for an hour about those sorts of things? So I was thinking all those things are true. And friendship, the title of this session, I think it's called The Problem of Friendship. Is that right? Is that what you texted me, Steve? Yeah, The Problem of Friendship. And I thought, well, it's not so many problems with friendship. Like we all, it's a human thing, right? It's a pretty natural thing to do. We don't wake up and say, okay, today I need to focus on friendship. I need to see if I can get more friends or what have you. Excuse me. It's just a normal human way of living that we just instinctively reach out to be in relationship with others. And so friendship it's not a problem for us. But I was thinking maybe if we think with regard to our faith as well, maybe we can think of it as the challenge of friendship. So I would just have reworded it for my own understanding. Instead of the problem of friendship, maybe the challenge of friendship. And I thought we all have an understanding of what it means to be a good friend, because we have an understanding as well of what it means to be a bad friend. It's the opposite of all those descriptions that you all offer. So we have that understanding. I thought, well, maybe we could look at what we would say like the interior disposition, the stuff on the inside, because I'm always most interested on the stuff that goes on the inside, the stuff in our heart, our spirit, our soul, however we want to describe it. It's the stuff on the inside, because ideally, as a Christian, the stuff we see on the outside, that is how we live, how we treat our friends, how we treat the stranger, how we live our faith, those things that are expressed on the outside, that is the things we can see and the things we can hear, ideally, it comes from the truth that's on the inside, that is what is in our heart. And ideally, again, as a Christian, is that these things correspond, right? That they correspond. That is, that what we see on the outside is the same as what's going on the inside. When we have a difference, that's when in the scriptures Jesus is always speaking to people. He says, you hypocrites, you Pharisees, you hypocrites, things like that. Where the outside, what you see on the outside, does not correspond to what's on the inside. So I thought maybe we could look at friendship with regards to that interior disposition, or the stuff that goes on the inside. So for me, there were 3 things, I guess, and we can't exhaust it in 1 hour or whatever. Friendship is a very big topic, but 3 things came to my mind. The first thing is the Transfiguration. We just celebrated that feast last week on August 6th in the Latin calendar. Is it the same calendar, the Chaldean calendar? In the same one, very good. So we just celebrated the Feast of the Transfiguration on August 6th. So the Transfiguration came to my mind. The second thing that came to my mind is this idea of being forgiven. Forgiveness with regard to the place, forgiveness is placed within friendship. And the last thing is the sending out of the 12. And with regard to forgiveness, for me, the passage that came to my mind is Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, that famous passage that we often hear at weddings about love is patient, love is kind. So those were the 3 scripture passages that came to my mind. So if we think about the Transfiguration, we'll start there, and what the Transfiguration, what it can tell us and how it can help us with regard to our friendship, or with regard to how we relate to others. Now, the Transfiguration. What happened in the Transfiguration? Who knows the Bible so good? Who knows the Bible? The Feast of the Transfiguration, August 6th. What happened? Yes, thank you.
Transfiguration, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, and
Just like, I can't hear. Go ahead, miss, one more time.
Jesus took Peter, James, and John aside, and he appeared to them in his glorified form with Moses and Elijah next to him.
Moses and Elijah, exactly. They were there, and 3 of the disciples were there. Yeah, that's right. John, Peter, and maybe Andrew. I'm not sure. I think. Oh, James. Okay, those three were there on the mountain. And so Jesus, he was transfigured. His clothes were dazzling white, and the prophet Elijah and Moses were there as well. Very good. So, how does the Transfiguration? Who can kind of guess? What would the Transfiguration? How would the teaching of the Transfiguration? How could you imagine that the Transfiguration has something to say about friendship? What do you think? Who can read my mind? Yes. Okay, yeah, that's right. I've thought of that. At the end, he tells them not to say anything until the Son of Man has risen. Exactly, yeah. Good, miss.
Maybe it's like Jesus took his 3 favorite disciples and he showed them who he was.
Okay, so Jesus, so he gave those 3 special treatment, eh? He showed them who they are. Very good. Those are the 3 special friends everyone always dislikes because they get special treatment. Exactly. Good. Sir.
When God the Father told Jesus that you are my son, my beloved son.
Yeah. Very good. When the voice of the Father comes and identifies or fully reveals the full person of Jesus. Exactly. The full person of Jesus that we know, those 3 disciples knew that Jesus was perfectly human, right? Because they saw him eat food. They saw him laugh. They saw him do all the normal human things. So they knew he was a human being. That was not a revelation. But the revelation of the Transfiguration was that also that he was perfectly human and perfectly God. It was a revelation of the divinity of Christ to these three disciples. Good. Was your hand over this way?
It just was like how you imagine the Transfiguration. So I was like, for me, it's like I have a place, like for example, I have a special place when I have like new friends. I'll show them, guys, let's go with me. That's my special place, that where I go, where I chill, where I have fun.
Okay, so you bring them to your man cave or something like that, eh? Very nice, okay. You bring them to the man cave. Nice. Okay. So, again, everything that you said is correct, but I was thinking about, let's see, sir. Can you be my guinea pig? Perfect. Just say yes. Don't worry. What's your name? Milad, perfect. Milad, to me and to everyone else, I want you to tell us all your deepest thoughts, fears, hopes, everything. Go ahead, we just met. Tell me everything. Tell me everything about yourself. Next time. Maybe we need time in the man cave first, and then you can tell me those sorts of things. Exactly. he's getting out of the front row. I was thinking that, so when Jesus is transfigured on the mountain, what he does is he shows his full self to his closest friends. He shows his full self, perfectly human and perfectly God, to his closest friends. So that is, he reveals, he shares his full self with his closest friends. And that's a mark of friendship, because I was just thinking with Milad, well, of course he's going to be uncomfortable, and of course he's going to think, oh my God, why didn't I sit in the back? Why should I be at the front? And I'm not going to tell this guy my deepest thoughts, my greatest fears, my greatest hopes, and things like that. I don't even know him. I don't even know him, so why would I do that? So what we begin to see is that with those that we don't really know, we don't necessarily share our full selves. Like if you think about yourselves and you think, well, I'm in the subway, and it's packed, it's rush hour, and there's a person beside me, and we sort of nod and we say, hello, how are you? You don't necessarily, to this person that you just bumped into while holding the bar in the subway, you don't go into every single detail of your day, nor do you talk about problems at home, or nor do you talk about your greatest ambitions in life. You just met them, so you basically keep it at a superficial level. And I often think, like, when we meet people for the first time, like at some party or gathering or something like that, when we introduce ourselves to them, what are the sorts of things that we ask or that we share with them? So just imagine you're at some sort of gathering or party or whatever, and you meet a person for the first time. What are the sorts of things that you ask of them or that you share with them of yourself? Miss? We've just met. You asked me a question. We've just met. My name? I told you that already. Just easy, yeah. John, exactly. Well, we asked, what's your name? Very good. Who else? Miss, did you get your hand up?
What do you do?
Exactly, your career. What do you do? Good? Or if you're younger, you say, where do you go to school? What do you study? Want to do? Good, Miss.
Where are you from, or what's your background?
Exactly. Where are you from? Exactly. What's your background?
Do you fight with your wife?
Do you what? Do you fight with your wife? Okay, good. Anyone else? You may want to ask, like, where do you live? Or maybe if it's a gathering, where you go to church, things like that. But again, this.
What villages are your parents from?
What villages are your parents from? Exactly. So what I'm trying to convey is that, again, we keep it just on the surface. We keep it just on the surface, and you think about it, what we're doing is we kind of keep up, we protect ourselves, right? We protect ourselves. We don't share ourselves, our full selves, with another person whom we've just met. We protect ourselves. We talk about where I go to school, where I live, what village my parents are from, what sport I like, who's my favorite team in that sport. We keep it at a very superficial level. All right? Does that make sense for everyone? That's our normal human way of interacting. The difference with friendship is that in friendship, if it's just at the superficial level, I can only talk about the Toronto Blue Jays for so long, right? I can only talk about the Blue Jays for so long, or I can only talk about this movie for so long, or I can only talk about the village my parents are from, or where I go to school for so long, that if it just keeps at that level, obviously we're going to move on. It needs to go to a different level, it needs to go to a deeper level. And so for me, with our closest friends, one of the most important things is that we feel a freedom, or we feel a confidence, or we feel, as someone said earlier, a trust, so that I can allow them to see me for who I am. That I'm not going to pretend. If you think about like Halloween, and when we were younger, you dress up, you wear a mask or whatever. that in a way we can live our life in that way. Even though we don't wear the mask or something like that, we project a certain image to others. And sometimes that image, or oftentimes, it doesn't correspond to who we truly are. We want people to be impressed, so we tell them, well, I study this, or I live here, or my family is from there. Again, we project a certain image to others, so that in a sense they can have a relative understanding of who we are on a superficial level. That superficiality has no place in friendship. And we have a scriptural basis for that. And that's the transfiguration. Because when Jesus Christ revealed his full self to those 3 disciples, again, Jesus is saying a very profound thing. And the profound thing, if you just think about your own life and you think about, well, who would I share my full self with? Who would I talk about my deepest fears, my greatest hopes? With whom would I do that? It wouldn't be the person on the subway that I just met. Rather, it would be a person that I know, a person that I trust, and a person whom I love. For me, those are the 3 parts of what Jesus is trying to speak to us or convey to us with regard to the transfiguration. God is saying, look, I know who you are, and I trust you, and I love you. And so because of that, I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to show you who I am. And not just a part of me, but I'm going to show you the full me. And so Jesus Christ, perfectly God and perfectly human. So what we can see in the transfiguration is God is showing us how we are to be, how we are to relate. That with God, so too is God saying, if I show you who I fully am, so too in faith can we show God who we fully are. You know, we don't have to, again, hide or pretend or put up a mask, but we can allow God to see us for who we are. Totally. Not just the part of us that we're most proud about, rather the whole person. Those things that we wish were different within us, we can allow God to see them. And for me, we're thinking with regard to friendship, it's always important for me to begin with how we relate this to God. Because it is from that relationship with God, that's the stuff on the inside. And that then is going to allow us to live a certain way on the outside. So if in faith we can begin to see that God so loves me, and God so trusts me and knows me, that he's willing to share, to show me his full self. That he's not going to pretend, he's not going to hold anything back. That he knows me, he trusts me, and he loves me. And so he allows me to see his full self. That when I begin to know that, not just in my head up here, but I begin to know it in my heart down here. And then I begin to understand who I am in God's eyes. That if God can treat me in this way, I must not be so bad. I must not be I'm not a disappointment to God. There's a wonderful quote from St. Teresa of Avila. She was a Spanish nun in the 1500s. And St. Teresa had a sentence in which in her prayer, she said, see God, seeing you, and smile. See God, seeing you, and smile. And so what she is saying to us is that when we think of ourselves, we often think about those things within us that we wish were different, and we think others wish that they were different within us, and so too do we think that God wishes they were different as well. And so because of those things, when we relate to God, we need to cover them up. We need to hide them from God. But when we do that, we can't have a true friendship with God. Because Jesus has shown us what it is to be a true friend. That he shows his whole self to these 3 disciples. He doesn't hold back. And so then in our faith, that step we make in faith is to say, well, if Jesus has done this, maybe I can do it as well. Maybe I can allow God to see me for who I am. The things I'm proud of, the things I wish were different. Because when he sees me, he smiles. And he smiles because he loves the person he sees. And so in faith, that's that first step, is that we can say, okay, in my faith, I can allow God to see me for who I truly am. And I have no fear of being condemned by him. All right? And if I don't have that fear of being condemned, then the ground I stand on is secure. It's a stable ground. It's not shaking, it's stable. And it's stable because the ground we stand on, the ground in which we seek to live on, is the Father's love. It is the Father's love. And so for me then, with regard to friendship, how does this then relate to friendship? Well, if I know in my heart that I am loved by him, and that can never change. If I know that love is always fully given, even at that moment in which I am sinning, God's love is fully given and God continues to smile when he sees me. If that's my ground and I know it in my heart, then in my relationships with others, it's not marked by fear. It's not marked by this whisper, this deceptive whisper within me that says, no, you need to show people a different face. You need to talk about your strengths. You need to impress them, because if you do not, they will have nothing to do with you. They will think you're a piece of garbage. That's a deception from the evil one. That's a deception from the devil. And so for us then, what comes from God is to know that we are loved. And when we know that we are loved, we are free. We are free to be who we are with other people. We can allow them to see us for who we are. And I think in friendship and relationship, this idea of, obviously we would say, being a superficial friend is not anyone's idea of a good friendship, but rather a friendship that is marked by freedom, in which the other person can say, look, this is who I am, and I see who you are, and we're together in this. There's no condemnation that's going on, because the ground we stand on and the ground on which we seek to live is love. It is the Father's love. And we know that it can never be taken from us. I often think with regard, yes, did you have that? No. Oh, sorry. If you have a question or comment, by all means, we'll have time at the end. But if there's something that you want to interject right now, feel free. I often think like in weddings and marriages, you know, that I tell the couple that they're doing this most profound and beautiful thing. You know, and what I say to them is that at this moment in a wedding, that the groom is saying to the bride, it's right from the Transfiguration, the groom is saying to the bride, I know you, and I trust you, and I love you. And so I'm going to take my whole life, the things I'm proud of, and the things in a way I wish were different. And I'm going to put that in your hands, because I know you will not condemn me and reject me. And then the bride says to the groom, you know, at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take who I am, the things I'm most proud of and the things I wish were different. And because I know you and I trust you and I love you, I'm going to take my whole life and I'm going to put that in your hands. Again, because there's no fear of condemnation or rejection. Because the ground they stand on is the ground of love. And so in our own friendships, this is the ground in which we move from. It is the ground of love. That we can allow other people to see us for who we are. The things we're most proud of, and the things even within us that we wish were different. Okay, that's the first pillar of friendship according to Father John. How's that sound? Nice? Good. Okay, the second one, we can go into forgiveness. We'll go into forgiveness. That I was remembering this other Jesuit priest, we studied theology together, and we were good friends. Our rooms were side by side. He's from a different country, he's from Jamaica. And our rooms were side by side, and so we often obviously talked. Yeah. And then over those 3 years together, we became very good friends. And after I was ordained a priest, I think I was a year or two ahead of him. And so I was sent to Jamaica. And so I was sent to Jamaica, and then he was going to be joining me in the following year. And so we were so excited. Okay, we get to work together. We get to live in the same place, and we get to work together. So we talked about all the different things we could do. Good friends. And then when he came down, it all went sour. We were no longer good friends. And I was thinking about those years after that, after I came back to Canada, this guy, even when I was down there, you know, I was so disappointed in him. I was so disappointed in him, I was angry at him, I blamed him for these different things. And then, you know, we would talk to our friends about, I would talk to my friends about him, he would talk to his friends about me, all this sort of thing. And I remember on a retreat, he came up, you know, in my own prayer, in my own thoughts, and I was so angry that in a way that we were friends, and I thought, you know, he betrayed me, he let me down. And then I began to think. Suddenly I began to think about all the things that I had done with regard to him. All the ways in which I did not treat him as such a good friend. So I began to think, you know, I was a year ahead of him down there, and I was the boss. He was just ordained. He came down, and I remember thinking, I want to make sure that he knows I'm the boss and not him. So I would sort of cut him down when I could. Not directly, but sort of passively from the side. I wanted him to make sure that he knew that I was the boss and not him. And he was from Jamaica, and so obviously as well, he was better at being a Jamaican priest than I was, because I'm from New Brunswick. And all we do there is eat lobster. All right? So he was better at it. And again, I was jealous. I was jealous, and so again, I wanted to cut him down any chance I could. Not directly, because that would be unchristian, from the side. From the side. I would get him from the side. You know, and so all these things began to come to my mind. I had blamed him. I was angry, even furious with him. And I began to think of my own sinfulness and how I participated in kind of creating a situation in which we couldn't have true friendship. It doesn't deny that he did things wrong for sure, but what came to my mind are the things that I did wrong. My own sinfulness in this friendship. And then all of a sudden, the anger and the disappointment in him, it left me. It left me because I began to forgive him. And again, I began to forgive him because I knew that I had sinned and I was forgiven by God. And so for me then, that goes to St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians. In St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, the passage that I like to read it goes like this. St. Paul writes, he says that love is always patient and kind. It is never jealous. Love is never boastful or conceited. It is never rude or selfish. It does not take offense and is not resentful. Love takes no pleasure in other people's sins but delights in the truth. It is always ready to excuse, to trust, to hope, and to endure whatever comes. Love does not come to an end, but if there are gifts of prophecy, the time will come when they must fail. Or the gift of languages, it will not continue forever. And knowledge, for this too, the time will come when it must fail. For our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophesying is imperfect. But once perfection comes, all imperfect things will disappear. When I was a child, I used to talk like a child, and think like a child, and argue like a child. But now I am a man. All childish ways are put behind me. Now we are seeing a dim reflection in a mirror, but then we shall be seen face to face. The knowledge that I have now is imperfect, but then I shall know as fully as I am known. In short, there are three things that last: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And so for me, St. Paul's letter came to mind because again, it's talking about the primacy of love. That love is the most important thing, that love is everything. And when we know that love is everything, then we can begin to know in our own lives the times we say the wrong things and we do the wrong things, we know that we are forgiven. We know that we are forgiven by God. Because again, God's love does not come to an end. That God is love. And St. Paul wrote that love does not end. Prophesying ends. Languages ends. Knowledge ends. All these things will come to an end, but love does not come to an end. So that means then that in our own lives, when we do and say the wrong things, which for me is relatively often, even thinking the wrong things. Again, for me, it's relatively often, every single day, numerous times. And again, what we can see is to know within our own hearts the faithful love of the Father. The faithful love of the Father. It is to know in our own hearts that God's love is a merciful love for each of us. St. John Paul II once wrote that love and mercy are the same thing. He said that, in fact, you could use mercy as a synonym for love, a different word with the same meaning. That mercy and love are the same thing. And if they're the same thing, then it means that mercy is the way God loves. And mercy for us is not a love or a way of being in which is saying that you're constantly making mistakes. And because you're constantly making mistakes, I constantly have to be looking the other way or granting you forgiveness. No. Mercy is about God saying that the wrong things we say, that we do, and that we think, that these things are incomparable to His love. Because His love is faithful. And His love is faithful because He is love. Thus, He is faithful to us. And we can never change that. So I think in our own friendships with others, oftentimes we have good friendships and something goes wrong. And then all of a sudden we're not going to talk to that person for 5 years. We may see them and we ignore them. Or we see them and we go to the other side so as to avoid them. Again, for us, it is to know that if we are forgiven, so too then can we be bold enough to offer forgiveness to another person. And for us, it is to know that I do the wrong things. I say the wrong things. I think the wrong things. And yet His love is fully given. And we can always know that as a Christian because Jesus Christ is on the cross. And if Jesus Christ is on the cross, it means what St. Paul says, that love does not have an end. And if we come to know within ourselves that we are forgiven, that His love for each of us, His tender-hearted love for each of us, is a merciful love, then it begins to allow me to be more free in forgiving the faults of others. If I suddenly find out, that a friend of mine was talking to another person about me, we all hate that. We all hate to be the victim of gossip or slander or what have you. But again, for us, it is for us to begin to know that those words are not so powerful. That I can forgive because I know within myself I've talked about people too. And if I've talked about people and I've been forgiven, why is that something that's only good for me and not good for another person? If it's good enough for me, it's good enough for them. And so if I am forgiven, so too can I begin to be more free to forgive others. So that's the second pillar of friendship according to Father John. The first one is the transfiguration, that is walking on the ground of the Father's love. Living on that ground of the Father's love that is so secure and stable. Because I know that love's not going to be taken out from underneath my feet. And if I know that love is real for me, then I can be who I am. I can be the creation, the child that God has made me to be. So I can allow other people to see me for who I am, and I'm not going to be intimidated by who they are. I can also receive who they are, who they fully are, as much as we can in this life. Swig of water here. So, and the second pillar that we have is forgiveness. And forgiveness for us, it's not a duty. It's not an obligation that is placed upon us by God. Rather, forgiveness is an expression of who we are on the inside. That what we know on the inside is that we have been forgiven by God because God's love is a merciful love. And if I have been forgiven by God, if it's good enough for me, then it's good enough for another person. It's good enough for the stranger, and it's good enough certainly for my friend. So those are the two pillars thus far. The third one I was thinking, it has to do, the scripture passage for me that came to mind is the sending out of the 12. In Luke's Gospel, we hear the following. I think. Maybe I put the wrong thing. Yeah, I marked the wrong page. Anyway, you'll take my word for it. I'll just rehearse it a bit, and what we know is that at some point in preparation for Jesus' entrance into other towns, he sends out the 12, the passage I was looking for, but also another gospel, the sending out of the 72, that they go into the other towns to prepare for his coming. All right, so what we see in the passage is that Jesus elevates these other people. That Jesus doesn't say, look, you know you keep your spot. Don't you thinking that you can go out and proclaim the good news? Don't you think that you can go out and announce the coming of God's kingdom, that God's kingdom is here? Don't you think that you can go out and talk about the Messiah or the Son of God? You just sit here and you listen. You listen and you learn. That's your job. That's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, I give you all authority. That the authority that's been given to me, I give to you. And you go out into these neighboring villages and towns, and you announce the good news. You prepare for my arrival. And so what we see is that Jesus elevates these men. And so for me, this is a third pillar. It's a third pillar of friendship. There's a philosopher, when we had to study philosophy, his name was Friedrich Nietzsche. Has anyone ever read Nietzsche? This German crazy guy? Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche. And Nietzsche had this huge criticism of Christianity. Well, he had several. But one of them I remember is that he said that Christianity, the Christian faith, presses people down. It keeps them down. That's what the Christian faith does to people. It puts them down. But in faith, what we know is that could not be farther from the truth. Because Jesus sent the 12 out. Jesus sent the 72 out to go and proclaim the good news, the coming of the kingdom. And so what we can see in Jesus' actions is that Jesus elevates these people. Elevates them. He's not resentful, to use St. Paul's word. He's not jealous. He elevates them. He lifts them up. And for me, that's the third pillar of friendship, that we lift them up. Miss, did you find this? Chapter 9? Chapter 9 of Luke. Okay, let me see if I can find that. Okay, now I found it. Very good. Thank you, Miss. So the mission of the 12, it says that he called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all devils and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. He said to them, take nothing for the journey, neither staff nor haversack, nor bread nor money. And that none of you take a spare tunic. Whatever house you enter, stay there, and when you leave, let it be from there. As for those who do not welcome you, when you leave their town, shake the dust from your feet as a sign to them. So they set out and went from village to village, proclaiming the good news and healing everywhere. Thank you. And so for me then, this is the third part of friendship, is that with our friends, with other people, as a Christian, we want to elevate them. We want to lift them up. What we want to do is that we want to rejoice in their success. And it's so hard for me. I can be very competitive, you know. I played too much sports growing up or something like that. I want other people to be successful as long as I'm more successful. All right? I want people to be successful as long as I'm more successful than they are. Because for me, it's hard. It's hard to elevate people. I want to be elevated. But as a Christian, that's not how we live. Rather, as a Christian, we want to elevate others. We want other people to know how wonderful and beautiful and loved they are. And so with our friendship, again, we want to acknowledge the goodness, the holiness, the beauty in the other person. We don't want to keep them down. I watched this absolutely terrible movie a couple of months ago. When I was growing up, well, it's something like a high school movie about these, we're all a bit too old for maybe. It's two girls, they have a friend. Yes, exactly. I'm so sorry I watched it. Yeah, it's a very bad movie. Anyway, this movie, that they're basically two very pretty girls, smart girls, athletic girls, and then the third friend is not as attractive, or not as smart, or not as athletic, whatever. That's why she's called the goth, right? What is it? Oh, designated as the goth person. Uh-oh. Suddenly he's very self-conscious. So in this movie, the whole point is that there's this theory that they needed one person in which could sort of be put down, because in putting that person down, they would be elevated, they would be pushed up. They would look so much better compared to this third person. And in a sense for us in the movie, of course, that's not the case. Everything is everyone lived happily ever after at the end. But the point for me is that as a follower of the Lord, we want to lift people up. That we want to rejoice in their goodness, and their success, and their beauty, and their holiness. We want to rejoice, and so we lift them up. That we don't want to push them down so that we could then be elevated. Miss?
Sometimes it could be hard, you know,
Yeah.
to get over, like sometimes you try, and you still don't get to a point where you're genuinely 100% happy. How do you kind of overcome that and try to...
Yeah, so the question is, it's so hard to do that if, say, another person has a great success or whatever, that it's hard for us to fully rejoice in their success, right? Yeah, and for me, I don't think we're probably ever able to do it in this life, but what we want to do is we want to commit ourselves to trying and relying on God's grace to allow us to rejoice as much as we can. And what in my own mind, even if I say, wow, fantastic for you, wonderful job, in my own mind I'm thinking, man, oh man, why couldn't I have done that, you know? But even the fact, I may have the thought, but now if I don't say those words, that's a good thing. You know, that I can at least say the proper words. Even if I have a struggle within me, and in a way it's trying to change the outside and the inside, you know? And God's grace is real, and God's grace is transforming or redeeming us. And it doesn't come like with a snap of the finger, it takes some time. Mrs. Pink first, or salmon.
So you just said if someone, your friend or whatever, needs something, you're gonna tell them like, oh, that's really good, but like inside you're gonna be like, yeah, I want to. What's wrong with telling them like the whole thing, like, good job, that's really good, I really wanted to do it too.
Yeah.
What's wrong with saying like the whole sentence, like not keeping something for ourselves?
Sure. No, exactly. You know, you can certainly do that. It depends on
the way we say it.
yeah, like for me, there's a Jesuit we went through formation together, and he would be my closest friend, Father Collins. He's an American Jesuit. And he got on, he came up, I invited him up to the church last winter to do a talk at the church. And while he was up here, he works with the devotion to the Sacred Heart, and he went on Salt and Light and gave an interview. You know, and my mom just told me the other night because his dad just sent her the link. So my mom just watched the interview of my good friend, Father Chris, on the computer. And she told me, said, oh my God, fantastic, you know, he was amazing. He's such a great teacher. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, that's true. And inside, I've got garbage on inside. It's my best friend. It's my best friend, and I am so jealous. I'm so jealous, I'm thinking, he's an American, Salt and Light, they should get a Canadian on there, not an American. I should have been there, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm thinking, and I wouldn't say all that to my mom because her image of me would be shattered. So for me, it's the context. It's the context of when you could say the full sentence or when you'll hold back. And maybe like I'm really, really jealous, and so it's a deep thing, you know. And I don't want others to see that. I want God to see it, and I want God to redeem it. But it's deep within me. You know what I mean? Sorry, there's one more miss.
Same with adding on to what you were saying earlier. It's if we're actually allowing the Holy Spirit to enter ourselves, our bodies, because again we have the Spirit of God in us.
Yep.
We can allow ourselves to look past the negative aspects, components of our lives, and try to focus on what God wants from us.
Yeah.
So it's like we actually instead of putting our minds into the world, putting our minds into the next world, into what God wants. That's how we can overcome.
Yeah, that's right. So God's the Holy Spirit and God's grace at work within us. And I always think it's that redemption that's ongoing. Okay? Yeah, no, exactly. Those things are, and the only thing I say about my jealousy is that I'm still jealous, but I'm not as jealous as I used to be. I'm still jealous, but I'm not as jealous as I used to be.
So you were saying how you want to say the full sentence is for you it's more honest, right? Yeah. So in my mind, I would say it's not bad to be honest, but you might want to ask yourself the question: does it elevate the person who I'm telling it to, or does it stop them down? Maybe that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, that's a
To
good.
give them, to say for example, say you did really well in something, and I was like, oh my gosh, you did so well. I wish I did that well. For me, it almost sounds like I'm telling you you're doing so well. It's hard for anyone else to achieve that, so you feel better.
And you don't want the other person then to feel bad.
If I
Like,
said to you, oh, you did so good, well, guess what I got? You know, you say you got an 85, oh, I got a 90. You know, like, oh, you did so well, but I.
Not some, that's kind of rude.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the whole sentence. But does that make them elevated, or does that push them down?
You know, we're talking about jealousy, like when someone is like better than you, and you feel like, because like I always just tell them to make that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Sure, of course you can. Go ahead.
Okay, so from that point, like sometimes if you're close to a person, it doesn't matter too much. But pretend there's a time where you have that one friend, and say, for example, they always do something, and you tell them, hey, good job, but something. Hey, good job, but something. You know, the person who like is trying to do good things or trying to do something, it will bring them down. They don't want to talk to you anymore. You know, because every time they tell you, they know that like you're saying them good job, but it's like something else. Like, you don't really.
What if I want them to? What if I want them like to give them more like this really depends how you're saying it. It depends how you're saying it.
Exactly, it depends how you're saying it.
Something's wrong with what they're doing. Like I want them to fix this problem because I want them to improve.
Yeah. Maybe next time, maybe next time we do this together.
Very good. Yeah, there's a way, exactly. And some things that come to our mind, we can't. Some things that come to our mind, we can't, just thinking that, when we drive a car, not every word that comes to my mind if someone cuts me off, I should say. Right? Miss, you with your hand up?
Sometimes success doesn't necessarily mean happiness. Sometimes what successful people are more content from the inside. And I think that's the most important thing. Whether you're successful or not, or whether you have a career or you're working towards a career, you just gotta be content from the inside, and you just take time to find yourself.
Yeah, that's right. It's the peace that we have on the contentment and the peace that we have on the inside, that consolation. And for me, again, that's that reflection of the Father's love. That for me, the Father's love doesn't deny that there are going to be difficulties in life. But the peace that I have on the inside is because I know that even if I don't get the job, or even if I don't get into school, or even if this or that, I know that my value as a human person is not lessened. If my good friend Father Chris gets to go on TV, that doesn't make me of less value, because God the Father so loves me that he gave his very self. And that can never be taken from me.